Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to your communication skills class again. Today we are going to talk about some other techniques of communication skills that will help you understand that how you can incorporate business writing into your practical life or in at your workplace. Before moving on to today's lecture, let's thoroughly discuss that what we have done in our previous lecture. I'll give you a quick recap of what we have done in our previous lecture. So if you can see on the slide, in the previous lecture we thoroughly discussed that what is business writing. We thoroughly talked about that business writing is basically a kind of your business. Basically we try to define the word business. So business basically is a kind of a workplace or the place where you work. That's kind of a setup or that's kind of a scenario where you are actually working. So the kind of the material that you will be producing while working at your workplace would be that material that would you call a technical material or a technical paper or a technical writing. So any kind of the business writing is also known as technical writing, since all the material and all the information that is used there in your business is or has something to do with your workplace scenario or the technical scenario. We also talked about different types of communication. We thoroughly discussed that how you can actually incorporate these types of communication into your business. Then we thoroughly discussed that how actually you can develop your writing skills, since we talked about that business or these types of verbal communication have your spoken as well as your verbal or written communication. So our main focus is to first of all to polish your writing skills so that you have this idea that how you are going to write down the business papers and how you are going to write down the technical papers or your workplace writing. Since you are all a business administration students, so we will make sure that you are going to learn each and every possible thing in this semester, so that once you are going to inshallah jump into your practical lives and you are going to have a wonderful job, and then you are going to have this practical life, you won't find any difficulty in that what I'm supposed to do next and how I'm supposed to write down a letter and how I'm supposed to write down a memo and stuff like that. So for that we discussed 7 C's of communication that we discussed thoroughly in our previous lecture, and we try to define that how you can check for different C's of communication, as you can see on the slide. Let's check them out and let's recap them one by one. First of all, we discussed completeness, in which we talked about that how you can make your message complete by keeping in mind 5 W's and 1 H. Now we discussed that what are these 5 W's and 1 H. These are what, where, why, who and when, and 1 H stands for how. Then we for the completion of the message or for the completeness of the message, we discussed thoroughly that these 5 W's and 1 H are thoroughly required in your writing once you are trying to communicate your message to the next person. Then we also talked about conciseness. We talked about the this exact or this ideal paragraph length, and then we also talked about the ideal sentence length, and we try to make sure that how we can actually create concise sentences which are actually complete in themselves. Then we talked about consideration, in which we thoroughly discussed the you approach, how you can by using this you approach you can target your audiences and how you can develop their interest and call for the benefit. In today's lecture we will also discuss you approach in detail. We are also going to discuss some of the approaches in English or in business English, which will help you understand that how you can develop your writing skills. Then the 4th C that we discussed was clarity. In clarity, we discussed that how you can make your sentences clear by using active voice or by avoiding ambiguous sentences, and then using the parallel structures, and then avoiding the redundant categories, and then avoiding phrases, and then reducing the phrases or converting the phrases into words. Then we talked about the concreteness. The next C was concreteness. Concreteness basically talks about the this concreteness of the structure in the sentence. So the thoughts that you are conveying should be concrete and should be factual. Related to your business life or related to your business scenario, the kind of the writings that you would be using would be a kind of factual. They would be different from the writings that we use in literature and that we use in dramas and then we use in the newspaper. They are kind of different writings. Then we talked about courtesy, keeping the ethics and courtesy of the reader, writing for the reader's benefit, and then keeping in mind that the reader is not going to get annoyed with what you have to tell them and how you have to tell them. Then we also talked about the correctness, correctness in terms of grammar, punctuation, spellings, and overall structure, the formatting, the kind of the structure they are asked to or they are required to be in or to be formed in. This is what we have discussed and we have talked about thoroughly in our previous lecture. I hope that you have learned from these 7 C's of communication, and you must have practiced all the activities that we have done in our previous lecture. Today's lecture is again going to be the combination of activities and theory as well. So the topic of today's discussion is going to be similarities and differences between verbal and non-verbal communication and some approaches to communication. So related to, once we will understand the similarities and differences between verbal and non-verbal communication, that one we have done in detail already. We will move on to the approaches to communication, and we will discuss that how and what kind of approaches you can use in your business communication to grab the attention of your audiences and to involve them more and more into your conversations. So let's move on and let's begin with the definition of verbal and non-verbal communication, which is really very important in your business scenario, because verbal communication is something that you are doing every time with your customers, with your clients, with the vendors, and you have to speak to them. Now sometimes you are sending this spoken communication that can be verbal or that can be oral. However, sometimes you are writing down a letter or writing down a memorandum, or maybe you are writing down an email. So your verbal communication has to go to them. Sometimes they come to visit you, you are the manager, or maybe you are the director of the company, and your customers and clients or the outside members who are coming from the other organizations to get the scenario of your working place or your institution, they come to you. Now along with the words or the choice of the words that you are using, your non-verbal behavior and your non-verbal communication is really very important. Today we are going to see that how both of them they are similar and how both of them they are different to one another. So to begin with, let's first of all discuss their definition. Now let's read out the definition of the verbal communication. Verbal communication is basically the sending and receiving messages by using words, sounds, speaking and language. Now, as I said, that verbal communication can be spoken or it can be written. So we have categorized this verbal communication into 2 categories. However, the definition explains that it's the sending and receiving of messages. So there has to be one sender. This is your sender. And there has to be one receiver of the message, whom sender is sending the information, and this is the information or the message that is being exchanged between these 2 individuals. So what is common between this verbal communication and non-verbal communication is that non-verbal communication also is the sending and receiving of messages. Now, verbal communication also was the sending and receiving of messages, where you have to have a receiver, where you have to have a sender, and where you have to have a message. However, the way or the way of communication in verbal communication is to occur from spoken to written communication that carries sounds and then alphabets and then language words. However, in sending non-verbal communication is the sending and receiving of messages in a variety of ways without the use of verbal codes like words, like a written communication, or it can be sounds, or it can be language. So all your non-verbal codes or all your non-verbal behavior is basically your non-verbal communication, and all your language, your words, your sounds, they are your verbal communication. So common thing between them is that verbal communication is sending and receiving of messages. However, non-verbal communication is sending and receiving of messages also. Verbal communication is sending and receiving of messages through spoken and written expressions. However, non-verbal communication is sending and receiving of messages through your physical, the way you are standing, your posture, your eye contact, your facial expressions, your hand movements, and so on. Now let's try to categorize them, and let's see in which category do they fall. Verbal communication falls under the category of speaking or oral. It can also be available in written or via email. And the third thing is the sign. Now this sign is the sign or the symbol that can occur in the form of A, B, C, D, E or F, and so on. So all the alphabet in English language or any other language which are the sign that possess a sound are known as the verbal communication. However, non-verbal communication is categorized into 4 different kinds. The first is physical. That can be related to your facial expressions, your sense of touch, your sense of smell, your body motion. The second category is your aesthetics. Now, non-verbal communication, there is one language that is known as aesthetics, like dancing and painting. Now, if you would have seen any painting, the painting does not talk itself. Like the painting is not talking, but actually the painting is revealing something, or painting is expressing something. So the non-verbal communication is that painting has got an idea in it. And sometimes this art of dance, like Indian dances, and then you would have seen these classical dances. Now these classical and these Indian dances, they reflect their culture, and sometimes they are the non-verbal communication. So by looking at the dance type, you can automatically tell that this is a folk dance, this is a rock dance, this is Kathak, and this is classic, and so on and so forth. So different kind of dances are also aesthetics, and they are also one kind of non-verbal communication. Then you have sign. Sign in non-verbal communication is somewhat different from the sign that is there in the verbal communication. Now signal, the traffic signal is one sign that you see. Now color red indicates that you should stop, color orange indicates that you should start, and green indicates that you can go. Flag has got different colors in it, and they also are the sign of something. Now our Pakistan flag is the sign of or unity, the Muslim majority, and the non-Muslim minority. Then different horns, you must have listened to different sirens, like these fire brigade sirens, and then different horns like ambulance siren. You get to know that there is an emergency, and the ambulance, it needs a path. And then there are other signs, like you must have seen outside the washroom like a lady, so it indicates that this is a female washroom, and then a male, it indicates that it's a male washroom. You would have seen these fork and these spoons outside the restaurants to indicate that this is a restaurant. Then symbolic, sometimes religion and your status is also a symbol of or a non-verbal communication or a non-verbal behavior. The way you dress up indicates that what kind of the culture or what kind of the society you belong from. So this also is your non-verbal communication or a non-verbal communicator. So this is how we categorize verbal communication and non-verbal communication into 2 different categories. The function of verbal communication is similar and somewhat different from a non-verbal communication, and let's try to see that too. Verbal communication, during our verbal communication, we are speaking to sometimes inform, sometimes we are speaking to inspire and motivate, sometimes we are telling or we are narrating a story, and sometimes we are asking questions. So in verbal communication, we ask questions for clarification gratification from others. Sometimes through our verbal communication, we are telling others a story that I had been to the university yesterday and it was fun and you missed it and all that stuff. Sometimes people, they are speaking to inspire and motivate, like your teachers, like, you know, these inspirational people. You would have seen these debates on television as well. People coming on the live shows and, you know, trying to persuade or trying to, you know, inspire and motivate the audiences or public to do something. Then you would have seen these non-verbal communication. Like non-verbal communication, first of all, it expresses emotions. Now through your non-verbal behavior, you can express your emotion. Like you can express your anguish, your anger, your happiness, and if you are cheerful towards something, if you are joyous towards something, so they are going to automatically reveal or to be revealed through your non-verbal communication. Then non-verbal communication also expresses the interpersonal attitude. Your interpersonal attitude, the way and the kind of the feeling that you have towards others is going to be revealed through your non-verbal communication. If you don't like anyone, of course you are, you know, you don't like to talk to them, but before you don't talk to them, your non-verbal behavior automatically tells them that you are not interested in talking to them. And there are so many other examples that can be incorporated here. Then accompany speech. Non-verbal communication, they sometimes accompany the speech. Now whatever you are saying through your words, non-verbal behavior sometimes accompany them, like saying assalamu alaikum. Now you are moving your hand also and you are saying it with your mouth also. Your verbal communication is being accompanied with your non-verbal communication. So this is what you call accompany speech. Self-presentation of one's personality. Now the way you dress up, the way you carry yourself is one non-verbal communication that would tell others that what kind of the society you belong from, what kind of the family background you belong from, in what condition you are coming from, and so on and so forth. So if you would have seen a guy, you know, coming from, or a girl coming very well dressed up, and then, you know, coming out of the Corolla, or then, you know, a big car, or any Mercedes, or let's say, you know, Land Cruiser, you would automatically tell, their non-verbal communication is automatically, you know, tell that they belong to a rich family and they are elite class. So this is how. And if you see a man, you know, on a bicycle, or maybe on a cycle, or maybe, you know, just walking and getting the bus, you would tell that they do not belong to, or they are not really very rich. So your non-verbal communication automatically tells or is very strong communication, or is one function of the communication that tells others what kind of the status or what kind of the background you belong from. Then the rituals and ceremonies. Now like your Eids, and then the Christmas, and then, you know, all these ceremonies, and then like Muslims, we go to the mosque and then we offer our prayers, so it tells that we are Muslims. And then we have our nikah during our wedding, so this is one ritual and this is one ceremony that is to be there for you know, making the bond of husband and wife in Islam. However, in India you have these Saat Phere things and, you know, stuff like that. So it varies from culture to culture, and it also becomes your non-verbal communication. So that was the function of non-verbal communication that we were discussing. Now moving on, there are some other differences between verbal and non-verbal communication. Verbal communication has got verbal cues which are usually digital. Now by saying digital, I mean that they are visible, like A, B, C and D. However, in non-verbal communication, you have or you don't have these digital appearances, you have these analogical appearances which are basically or which are not seen, or which can be only felt. Verbal communication are sometimes less universal because these A, B, C and D sounds, or maybe many more, are not understandable in any other culture or in any other language. However, non-verbal communication is more universal as compared to the verbal one, because the way you say goodbye, the way you say okay, the way you say I am well, and, you know, the way you point towards something, all of these things, they are stronger than your verbal communication. Then verbal communication has got less sensory directness, so less of the sensations and very minimum sensations of yours are involved in your verbal communication. However, non-verbal communication offers a greater sensory directness, and there is a greater chance that there is a larger number of all the senses: sense of sight, sense of touch, sense of smell, sense of hearing, and sense of taste. All of them, they are involved in your non-verbal communication. Verbal communication is less spontaneous. You cannot immediately reply to the next person sometimes, but non-verbal communication is more spontaneous because your reactions, they keep on changing from quickly from situation to situation. Your teacher said you don't have a class today, and you lit up and your eyes lit up, and she suddenly tells you, okay, I'm not going anywhere, and your expressions, they lit down and all that. So this is how they are more spontaneous, and you keep on moving from verbal expressions, from non-verbal expressions, from one non-verbal expression to the next one. So this is how they are somewhat different from one another. Now there are some similarities between two of them. Both involve the receiver and sender, as we have already talked about that. Both reveal emotions, exchange ideas and thoughts. Like you can express these emotions, ideas and thoughts through words, as well as you can express your emotions and feelings through non-verbal communication. Both have cues that are distinct. So this is one difference between two of them that should occur in the differences. Let's cross it out. Both can have multiple meanings. Now, whatever you are saying through your verbal communication can have dual meanings, or the denotative meaning of the word can be different. In non-verbal communication, maybe you are saying no, but you don't actually mean no, because non-verbal communication can also be, kind of manipulative. Both can be used for deceptive and manipulative purposes. So this is what I've been trying to tell you, that you can deceive someone through words and then your actions also. Both exhibit the property of productivity. So both of them, they are actually producing the information. So we would say that both of them, they are exhibiting the property of productivity. Now let's see that how both of them, they are similar and yet different from one another. The first thing that we are going to discuss is repetition. Now, non-verbal messages strengthen verbal messages. They kind of, repeat each other, or this repetition means that non-verbal messages, sometimes they repeat what is being said in the verbal messages. Like, for example, pointing to the subject of discussion. Like, for example, if I say, this is a pen. Now, I am pointing towards the pen through my non-verbal behavior, as well as I am, saying it through words. And if I say, let's go outside. Now, my pointing towards the door is automatically telling you that let's go outside. So this is how they repeat each other, or they, go hand in hand with each other. Then sometimes they are conflicting, verbal and non-verbal don't support each other. For example, telling a lie. Now that you are telling a lie to your mother, and you had been really very late last night, and your mother in the morning, she asks you that where have you been last night, and you say with my friends. Now, is your verbal communication telling that you were really with your friends? Now, whatever you are saying, verbal communication, your eyes, your facial expressions would automatically tell your mother that you are lying. Okay, so kids usually do that. So this kind of a habit, or this kind of a thing, that you are saying something, but your non-verbal communication is automatically telling or revealing that you are telling a lie. Then complementing, both of them, they can be complementing. Verbal messages elaborate the idea, and non-verbal messages supplement or reinforce each other. So they complement each other, or they go hand in hand with each other. So both of them, they are actually, supplementing each other. Then substituting, one can be used in the place of the other, or instead of the other. Like non-verbal communication can be used instead of verbal. For example, if you are wanting to say no, you are saying it from your mouth, so instead of you don't want to say, and you just simply, shake your head, it means that you are saying no. Your friend asks you that you want to go outside. So it means that no. So this is what you call substituting. So instead of saying something or instead of using the verbal communication, you have automatically used the or made use of the non-verbal communication. Sometimes regulating, for example, touching that you want to talk. So they regulate. Like for example, you put your hand on someone's shoulder and try to say like doing like this, and they would automatically understand that you want to talk. So this is what you call regulating. Then ceding or moderating. It moderates our tone, like shaking hands. Assalamu alaikum. Now this is kind of the warmth that you are showing. Assalamu alaikum. So this is kind of dull behavior that you are not interested or you are not pleased to see someone. So this is how these verbal communication and non-verbal communication are similar yet different to one another. Verbal communication is the encoding of messages into words either written or spoken, and non-verbal communication is the encoding of messages by means of facial expressions, body language and styles of dress. So this is how we have tried to jot down the similarities and differences between verbal and non-verbal communication. That was the first part of our today's discussion. Now moving on to the second part, that is more interesting, and I hope that you are going to enjoy that a lot. These are some approaches to communication somewhat related to what we have discussed in our previous lecture. That was the 7 C's of communication. That would help you understand that how you are going to incorporate these approaches of communication into your practical life. The first approach that we are going to discuss is a plain English approach to communication, and the second approach that we are going to discuss is the U approach. Now related to the U approach, somewhat we have tried to elaborate and we have tried to explain the U approach in our previous class as well, in which we discussed thoroughly that how you can consider the next person by using this U approach. Related to plain English, we would see that how, now the word plain itself indicates that that's going to be really very simple thing that can be elaborated for the next person. So these are the two things that we are going to discuss thoroughly in today's lecture. So to begin with, we will first of all discuss a plain English approach. A philosophy, basically a plain English approach was a philosophy or movement, or that's kind of a campaign which started in 1970s in UK, when basically people were unable to unable to understand different forms for benefits. Now in 1970s in UK, there were some forms like some kind of the advertisement being sent for people benefits, but they were kind of unable to understand because of the heavy English which was written there. Basically those forms were related to the insurance coverage which they could get, but those insurance benefits were not properly explained to the people, and that has created one problem amongst them, because they started thinking that this is kind of something that's going to get charged, and they are going to get charged for that, and they really got scared of it. That was a very sensible approach. A very sensible approach to business writing was then introduced, that was known as the plain English approach. That plain English approach basically talked about the first thing that it talks is that choose simple and common words instead of using the heavy English and the words which are not understandable by everyone. They preferred that we should use simple and common words which are understandable by the majority of people. Then use a simple sentence structure. Now using the complicated sentence structure or maybe the longer sentences or sometimes the passive voices will not be a very good idea when it comes to to the conversation of the lay audiences. So another idea being proposed was that use the simple sentence structure, and the third thing that has been introduced was that avoid the passive voice. Now by doing these three things, we would make sure that you learn how to write in the plain English. So the first thing that we are going to discuss is choosing simple and common words. Like for example, avoid words we don't use in everyday speech. Now plain English, basically it avoids the words that you don't use in everyday speech. Like for example, pertaining to, per your instruction, or responsible party are not those kind of things which you use every day. But police are here to assist you. Now this assistance word is not used every day by everyone. So instead of saying that, we would say Bart police are here to help you. Now help is a more common word, more simple word that is understandable by the majority of people. So words, simple words and common words should be used to reflect what you have to say. As per your instruction, responsible party and pertaining to should be replaced with the simple words, and I am giving you this task to explain or define these three words into your own words, or into the simple words. Now avoiding the technical words, like for example, a policy holder, wherein, heretofore, above mentioned, captions, in regards to, these kind of technical words should be thoroughly avoided in one-to-one or in the normal conversation, in the common conversation, where people cannot understand that what is this above mentioned, what is this heretofore, in regards to, captioned, policy holder, and other words which are going to create problems for the reader. Now I was reading one letter, and there was a word. I am writing it down for you. Aforementioned. Now since that was my early reading, and I was also a student like yourself, so I'd been wondering what does this mean, because that was a kind of a very long word, like aforementioned. So that was kind of a breakdown into the different syllables. So I tried to find out the meaning, and then I by picking up the dictionary, I found out the meaning. It means that that has been already mentioned. So words like these can be replaced. These technical words should be replaced with the easy words for the convenience of the reader. Choose the most common word that express your meaning. Now try to choose that most common word that reflects your meaning, or that expresses your meaning. Use rare words rarely. Now if you would try to be smart, and then you try to the impression is that the more you would use the heavy words, you would be called up as, or you would be addressed as, or you would be known as one of the well-known or well-known person. So Edward Bailey actually said that use rare words rarely, because if you are going to use rare words in your conversation, nobody is going to understand your conversation. And that's one rule of plain English, that the more familiar words you would be using, the more understandable your conversation is going to be for your audiences. Like for example, let's start from here. You say my outfit is from Outfitters. My outfit or my costume is of Outfitters. My gown is of Outfitters. My frock is of Outfitters. My dress is of Outfitters. Which one appeals to you most? The most easy word, that is dress. Everyone knows that this is a dress. A dress is something that you wear. Now saying my frock, my gown, my costume, my outfit would be kind of difficult for them to understand that what are you talking about, and what exactly you mean to say. So this is how, and this is what we actually mean to say, and this is what we are trying to elaborate, that simple and common words can help you express your meaning more clearly. Another thing that needs discussion is the use of simple sentence structure. As I've told you that the shorter your sentence is going to be, that is going to be more understandable by your audiences. Now let's read this example out. Having entered into an agreement, the parties heretofore mentioned are desirous of furthering the mutually beneficial efforts of both firms to. Now the point comes here. So that was, kind of beating about the bush, and that was a very long sentence that can be written down into a very simple sentence, that after the agreement the parties or the both firms decided to. So that was a very shorter way, or that was a very simple way of writing down the sentences. Another thing that you can do is avoiding the dangling participles, like being one of the oldest firms in the business, I am confident we can meet your needs. Like in general, don't put the subordinate clause first. I am confident we can meet your needs. So that was the basic core of the whole sentence, instead of just dragging or using these dangling participles to divert the attention of your reader. Another thing that we have discussed is by avoiding the passive voice, you can make your sentences and you can make your conversation plain. Now students are responsible for grading their own work. Now that was the right way of saying it. The wrong way was that the work will be graded by each student. So this is what we call active and passive voice conversion. You would be given the conversion of passive voices into the active one in your exam also, so try to practice them often, so that you can score good marks in your final examination. There is another plain English example. There is one idea of saying one thing in two different ways. Now let's read the second one first. Persons with disabilities shall proceed to the nearest stairwell and await assistance. In case of fire, use the stairs. Do not use the elevator. So which one appeals to you most? The first one or the second one? Of course, the first one, because this is shorter and this is more understandable by everyone. Now let's do a small exercise. Rewrite the following in plain English. Now that you have understood that you are supposed to avoid the complicated sentences, the longer sentences, you are also supposed to avoid the passive voice, and then you are also supposed to avoid the first thing that we discussed was the ambiguous words. Instead, use the common words which are understandable by everyone. Now there is a notice which says that no person shall obey call of nature in any street, public place or exposed to public view. Offender will be prosecuted and shall be liable to fine of HKS 10,000. Now you are supposed to convert that into very simple and plain English. This is your task. You are supposed to pick up your pen and copy and convert that into plain English. I will repeat that again. No person shall obey call of nature in any street, public place or exposed to public view. Offender will be prosecuted and shall be liable to fine of HK $10,000. Now what you are supposed to do is, you are supposed to use obey call of nature into easy word in any street, public space or exposed to public view. Offender will be prosecuted and shall be liable to a fine of HK Hong Kong $10,000. So you are supposed to find out the easy words for call of nature: exposed, offender and prosecuted or liable also. So this is what you are going to do, and I hope that you are going to do it well. So let's move on and let's see the advantages and disadvantages of plain English now. I hope that you are enjoying writing down the plain English approach. U approach is also another very interesting approach that is coming up, and let's see let's see the advantages and disadvantages of plain English. Now there are some advantages of plain English. Plain English is easily understood. There is no need for the experts to translate that very English into the easy English. It can be translated with accuracy, so once it's written in a very easy language, so it will be very easy for the audiences to translate with accuracy into their own language. Is attractive and is minimalist way, so it looks really very attractive, and it's very shorter one. Now there are some disadvantages of plain English. They are suitable for everyday business use, but it lacks aesthetic merit. Now there is no aesthetics coming in, like instead of using that my outfit is from a generation, or my outfit is from Gul Ahmad, instead of saying that, you say my dress is of Gul Ahmad. So there is no aesthetic, or there is no kind of what do you call vigor in it. So sometimes the disadvantage of plain English is that sometimes you lose this aesthetic merit. Sometimes it's boring to read in long passages. So if you keep on reading these kind of messages, they become very boring for the readers. So readers, basically those who are fond of reading books, they read those books which are full of aesthetic merit. They have got this flowery language and those words which grab the attention of the reader. It takes some effort to write well. Now some effort is required to write well, because of course not for every word the common or the simplest word for. So for writing down in the plain English, sometimes it requires some effort to write well. So should you write how you talk? Does that mean that once you are going to write down in the plain English, does that mean that you are going to write in a way as if you are talking to someone? Not quite. Everyday speech has a lower level of formality. The way we talk to our friends is not sometimes grammatical. Sometimes it's not that level. The level of formality is really low. We are supposed to take care of the sentence fragments. Now there are some fragments in the sentences, there are pauses, there are intonations, and you cannot carry your thoughts along together. Like the way I am speaking right now would be very different once I am going to write that down on a piece of paper, because on the paper my thoughts would be really organized, even though they are going to be in the plain English or in a very simple English. Then in our everyday speech we use contractions such as I am, this contraction, or I want, I wanna, and these kind of words are there in our everyday or common speech. Like I want to, instead of saying I want to, I will not, we say I wanna and I want to and I'm gonna and stuff like that. There are some colloquial words, and then of course slangs, the words which are not standard words that are there in our language. Sometimes we make a lot of repetitions of the words once we are talking to each other. So this is not what we call a plain English. Plain English is somewhat different from the way we talk. Good business communication depends on choosing the right level of formality and tone. So you are supposed to check down the level of formality, how formal you are, and what kind of the tone you are talking in, what kind of the tone you are picking up for choosing down that who is going to be your target audience whom you are going to talk to. So your formality, your level of formality and your tone automatically would differ from person to person, and it would automatically differ from situation to situation. There are some principles of conciseness that are supposed to be kept in mind once you decide for writing down in plain English, for conveying the most information in the fewest words. So conciseness basically is defined as conveying a lot of information into the fewest words or into the minimal sentences that you can. To do so, there are some examples, and there are some ways and techniques that you can use. Benjamin Franklin said that this is such a long letter, but I did not have the time to write a short one. So sometimes it happens like Benjamin Franklin as well. So you are supposed to decide that how you are going to use or make use of conciseness. So how to write concisely? There are some tips for you. Begin with the end in mind. What's the point here? So whatever point you want to make should be there in your mind, so that for every sentence you want to wrap up your thought. For every new sentence that you write, you want to wrap up your thought. So this is how you can make your paragraph, or you can make your writing concise and shorter. have a good structure by using an outline. So outlining technique, this brainstorming technique of outlining can be used for making sure that you are going to have the good structure of your whole conversation. Limit the number of examples. Choose the best single example to make your point. So you are going to do, or what you are going to do is to limit down the number of the examples, and you are making your outline, and you are going to decide that I am going to put this example, this example, this example, and the number of examples. But out of all of them, you are the best judge, and you know that which one is the best example that you are going to put into your writing, because you cannot of course put all the examples, because if you are going to put all the examples, that's going to make your paper very large and very lengthy. So to avoid that, what you are supposed to do is to limit the number of examples, and for limiting, you should decide that which example is the best one. Another technique is sat time, that make use of the rich vocabulary and choose the exact word. So this is what we are going to see in the next slide. Like choosing the right word, be careful for the word choice, because you want to produce your powerful writing. Now don't be vague, like for example, if these kind of words, like I have given you the leverage, I emphasize, how much do you emphasize, and how much do you focus, and how much you have given these this leverage. So this is what you cannot decide the level of that very thing. So you are looking for the right word that you can use. I have given you the 10% leverage in so and so. So I emphasize on this, that 50%, I emphasize 50% should be done this. So this is how you put the words which are not vague. Do use the right technical term, like cash flow, income, profit. Marketing is not the same as promotional expense. So cash flow, insurance, income, profit, all of them, they are kind of difficult words to understand. So be very careful while you are making the word choice, because they make your writing powerful. Now another tip for writing concisely is to edit what you have written. Take a short break, or switching tasks is better than starting at something for hours. So if you are writing down something for hours and hours and hours, and you get tired of it, try to take a break and then come back and then read your paper. That is also going to help you see and edit that what you have written. Look for phrases that could be of the single words, like we have discussed in our previous lecture. Instead of saying that due to the fact that, now this is a very long phrase that can be reduced into only one word, that is because. And there are so many other words that can be reduced. Then redundancy, the redundant categories that we have discussed in our previous lecture as well. Like for example, blue in color. Now blue itself is a color, so saying blue in color would be a very redundant idea. So we are going to avoid this redundancy. Repetitions as mentioned above. So this is again one repetition. You are not going to repeat things which are already mentioned above. Wasted words, like in order to, you can simply say to. So this is how you can reduce, or you can write down concisely. Understanding the level of formality, business context and tone. So this is very important for all business communication, either that's going to be written or spoken communication. So let's discuss it quickly. Now there are levels of formality in every communication that we do. Like for example, the casual level would be like the way you are talking to your friend very casually. Hey, guess what? I got a job. Now the way you are communicating with your friend is pretty different, and that's pretty casual. Now that's one kind of the informal example that we are going to discuss. I'm really happy I heard back from the accounting firm. So this is kind of informal. Maybe you are talking to your father, maybe you are talking to your friend who is not very close to you. Now there is another semi-formal. Maybe you are talking to your teacher. I've been hired as an accountant at the company. That was my first choice. So So this is another way. And overly formal, that is very formal communication, that my services have been retained as a trainee accountant level 3B. So you have different levels of formality that depends from person to person, or that depends on situation to situation. Now, how do we detect these levels of formality? First of all, our word choice is going to be the main thing that is going to help us understand that how we can decide or how we can detect all the levels of formality. Low frequency, that is monarchy, single signals formality. Slang or familiar bump, it signals informality. So if I say that it reveals monarchy, so that's kind of a very formal word. And if I say that it bumped me, so it means that it signals informality. Use of contractions, he ain't with me, so this is this contraction is also going to be one informal thing. Complexity of sentence structure signals high formality. So the more sentence structure is going to be complex, the more formal it is going to be. The less formal the sentence structure is going to be, that is going to be more informal. Formal language basically avoids colloquial words. Colloquial language may be meaningful to one social group but not to the others. Now let's consider these expressions of surprise that have no literal translatable meaning, but that means that I am shocked in different subcultures of the United States. What's that about? Now this expression is automatically telling that they are shocked. Go figure. Beats me, oh my god, it beats me. So these all of these expressions, they reveal this shock. So instead of saying that I am shocked at it, oh it beats me, go figure it out, what's that about? So all of these expressions, they have become one colloquial language expressions in US where they are kind of colloquial language in one social group. Oh, here comes the business context purpose, which determines the appropriate level of formality. So the more formal you are going to be, the more formal language you are going to use, you are going to reveal that this is the formal situation. And the more informal language you are going to write in, and the more informal language that you are going to use, that is going to reveal that this is going to be an informal situation. Tone is not same as the level of formality. Now that as we have discussed the level of formality or tone, it is not same. This formality can be difference that is related to your words, but tone has to be different. Now choosing the right tone, like for example, from moving from hostile to officious to cool, then businesslike, pleasant, warm, and then friendly. So this is the tone or the variation of the tone that decides the level of informality and then being very formal. So this is how you differentiate between the level of formality and tone. Now moving on to the next slide. Now let's see the possible ways to communicate. Now in a person meeting individual, now there are some possible ways of communication in your verbal communication. In person meeting, which is individual, this is one way of communicating, or this is one way of deciding that where you are going to communicate and how you are going to communicate. Another way is group or team meeting. In-person meeting, that is individual meeting. Then there is group meeting. Sometimes you communicate through writing the memorandums. Sometimes you communicate through writing letters. Sometimes you send faxes. Sometimes you send emails. Sometimes you send instant messages that you were really fond of. Text messages, your phone call, and your web meeting. So all of them, they are your verbal communication that can be spoken or that can also be written. So there are some possible ways to communicate where you are going to make sure that you are going to keep in mind this plain English approach. Now how to choose the medium of communication? There is one-way or two-way communication. So you would decide that it's going to be one-way communication, or either you are going to write down the letter or you are going to have this back-to-back email fire. Then emotional impact, it will also talk about the emotional impact, that what kind of the level or what kind of the formality you belong from. Then do you want to keep that thing for your permanent record, or are you writing that down for only only yourself. Then there is a level of formality that you would see that what kind of the level of formality you would have to keep in mind if you are going to send a letter outside the organization or you are going to send the letter inside the organization. So that was about the plain English approach. Now let's talk about the using the you approach in your communication, especially your verbal communication. That's going to be one great help to understand that how you can develop your communication, written communication as well as your spoken communication. Now here are two examples in front of you. There are two sentences written right in front of you. Which sentence works the best? I am extremely pleased to inform you that you have received a promotion. Now here the emphasis is on me, the speaker or writer of the sentence. So you approach basically calls for calling the you. Here the main emphasis is I. I is not that important for this you is important because you have received this promotion. So instead of writing that I am extremely pleased, who bothers that you are pleased or you are displeased that somebody has got promotion or not. The basic news is that you have got the promotion. So the right way of writing the sentence would be that you start the sentence with this you. Now let's see the right way of saying it. Instead of saying that it gives me a great pleasure to make this announcement about an employee who I have known for many years. It has been my distinct pleasure to supervise and train Miss Sarah Smith, who I am happy to announce has been awarded a promotion. Oh my God, that was a very long sentence, and the only thing that the boss really wanted to announce was that Miss Sarah Smith has got the promotion. Who really cares about my player? Why is it important that I am the supervisor? So why does he have to explain that he has trained her and he has supervised her? The point is that she has got the promotion. Focus on the good news and on Sarah. So the right way of rewriting it would be that you are going to focus on the good news and on Sarah. Congratulations on your promotion, Sarah. So this is the right way of writing it. So Sarah would be really happy to find out that what this message is about. So message was about her promotion and she would be really pleased to know that. Now here the subject of the sentence would be you and the message is clear, quick and positive. So to make your messages clear, quick and positive, you are going to make sure that you are going to use this you approach into your sentences. Now you are going to write them down on your own. Pick up your pen and pick up your copy, and I am going to read them out for you so that you can write them down with the help of you approach. Applications for credit cards must meet the following criteria. The application form must be signed and dated by the applicant. The application form must be filled in caps by the applicant. The application may be submitted in person at the credit department or online. Now here the application is more important than what you are supposed to do with the application. So you are supposed to convert all these sentences by using the you approach in them. Like applications for credit card must meet the following criteria. Let's since this is kind of a technical sentence, let's leave that, and we are going to make changes in 3 of them. The application form must be signed and dated by the applicant. You can write it down in the active voice by saying the applicant must sign and date the application form, or insert date on the application form, or you are supposed to, or you must sign and insert date on the application form. So this is how you are making use of you. The application form must be filled in caps by the applicant. You must fill the application form in caps. The application may be submitted in person at the credit department or online. Now, you are supposed to submit the application in the credit department or online. So this is the right way of saying it. You must make sure that you are, whomsoever you are providing the information is going to be clear and understandable, and they should be targeted and they should feel that the news has been announced for them. The best way to practice this skill is to eliminate the use of I we, and or company, or the company name or any personal pronoun reference is all your business writing. So this is the right way of saying it, and this is the right way of writing any kind of paper with the help of you approach. Now, business letters can be formal without being impersonal. The words you, we, and I are more personal than referring to this office, this organization, or enterprise. Use I to refer to yourself, you to the recipient, and we to refer to your department or company. Do not use the company name, for example, Motorola believes. So we believe instead of writing down the company name, since business letters can be more can be formal without being impersonal. So this is how you are going to make changes in your letters. Now here is an example for you, an image that has been taken for you from internet. Hello, can I help you? Now customer says, hi, I tried installing the Farcast wireless router in my apartment, but I am not getting any signals out of it at all. Now agent says, okay, let's underline this. Okay, let me what steps you took. Tell me what steps you took and we'll see what you did wrong. Customer, what do you mean did wrong? I followed the instructions exactly. The router is obviously defective. Agent, well, we'll see. Did you install the software before connecting the LAN cable as the manual says? Customer, of course I did. I just said I followed. So this is how the agent has kind of annoyed the customer, because they are kind of using this discourteous language that does not carry you. Now let's revisit this example again with the help of you approach. Customer, hi, I tried installing the Farcast wireless router in my apartment, but I am not getting any signals out of it at all. Agent, I'm sorry, you are having trouble. Now this you is really meaning something. Let's go through your setup and see if we can find the problem. Now this we refers to their organization. Customer, great, thanks. Agent, first can you tell me, now this you is really important. Now first, can you tell me which of the small green lights on the front of the router are lit up? Customer, only the power light, all of the other lights are for. Okay, we have power, but looks like the router isn't getting a network signal. So this is how they have, by using the you approach in their conversation, they have tried to satisfy the needs of the customers. This you approach is really very useful once you are going to jump into the business. So that was all about today. We have thoroughly discussed the similarities and differences between verbal and non-verbal communication, and I hope that you have learned all the similarities of the categories, of their definition, of their function, and then other differences also and other similarities also. We also discussed thoroughly the plain English approach. We discussed that how you can write down in the plain English by using the common and everyday words, then how you can practice the conciseness. Then there are many ways to communicate in the plain English that is related to the business needs. Prefer the plain English in your mindset, and always apply self-criticism and edit what you have written. So editing is really very important, and self-criticism is also very important. And for editing, make sure that you leave your writing aside for some time and then you reread it, because that's going to be one good idea of writing down a good piece of paper. Know that business purpose will usually determine the level of formality. Then understand you make a choice about the tone and the formality, and then we also discuss the you approach that is really very important in or your business communication. So I hope that you have learned that how to use the plain English approach and you approach in your business communication. Now pick up your pen and pick up your copies and do the tasks that I have assigned you. I am Manila Noshin saying goodbye to you till the next lecture. Take very good care of yourself. Allah Hafiz.